Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Ariella Leani, and coming up in today's newscast, the Biden administration approves the Israeli Rafah plan in exchange for a halt in retaliation on Iran. Non-stop sirens sounded on the northern front as the IDF retaliates for Hezbollah's drone attack on Wednesday. And tech giant Google fires 28 anti-Israel protesters. An ABC exclusive reveals that Israel planned an Iranian retaliation but backed out twice this week. While international pressure increases, the Biden administration confirms that they would approve a Rafah operation if Israel were to halt Iranian retaliation. ILTV's Devo Klein has the full report.
An ABC exclusive report reveals that Israel had planned retaliation to the Iranian attack and backed out twice this week. Since the drone assault, there has been much deliberation regarding the Israeli response to the Iranian attack on Saturday night. The Israeli Security Cabinet met multiple times as both Israeli and U.S. sources confirmed that a response will come. This amid immense international pressure to halt any response out of fear of a wider regional conflict. In yesterday's cabinet meeting, Prime Minister Netanyahu touched on international support during the attack and had this to say regarding retaliation.
יש להם גם כל מיני הצעות ועצות, אני מעריך את זה, אבל אני רוצה להבהיר שאת ההחלטות שלנו אנחנו נקבל בעצמנו. ומדינת ישראל תעשה כל מה שצריך כדי להגן על עצמה.
Now, sources told ABC that on two separate nights this week, Israel prepared and then aborted retaliatory strikes against Iran. Reports indicate that a retaliation won't take place until the Passover holiday has passed. Senior sources told Israeli media that the response won't be what was planned any longer. Diplomatic sensitivities won out, adding there will be a response, but it seems it will be different from what was planned. And in a major development, sources are reporting that the Biden administration approved the Israeli plan for a Rafah operation, a delicate matter that had been previously rejected by the U.S. This on the condition that Israel would avoid any retaliatory action toward Tehran. A senior official told Qatari media that Prime Minister Netanyahu managed to obtain American approval for a military operation in Rafah in exchange for Israel refraining from carrying out a wide military operation against Iran. The Qatar report also noted that Egypt is showcasing full readiness and preparedness of its forces stationed in northern Sinai along the 14-kilometer border with the Gaza Strip as part of a plan to deal with the scenario of a ground invasion in Rafah. 4 Hamas battalions are believed to be stationed in Rafah, along with over 1 million civilians sheltering there after fleeing fighting in other parts of the Strip. Rafah is also thought to be where Hamas leaders are hidden, and most importantly, where Israeli hostages are predicted to be held.
And now, as we reach day 195 of Israel's war against Hamas, Israel's fight against terror is by no means limited to the south. 18 were wounded yesterday as Hezbollah launched a drone from Lebanon towards northern Israel, hitting a community center. More in the following report. The IDF launched an airstrike targeting a Hezbollah site in northeastern Lebanon just hours after the terror group carried out a drone attack on northern Israel, injuring numerous soldiers and civilians. The IDF confirmed that fighter jets struck Hezbollah air defense infrastructure near Baalbek, a known stronghold of the group, nearly 100 kilometers from the Israeli border. A military analyst confirmed that the airstrike deep into Lebanese territory was a direct response to the drone attack on Arab al-Aramshe. Hezbollah claimed responsibility for the attack, stating it targeted an Israeli military building with guided missiles and explosive-laden drones. The aftermath of the drone attack resulted in 18 casualties, with victims rushed to medical facilities. Galilee Medical Center in Nahariya reported several injuries, including critical and serious conditions among soldiers and civilians. The IDF revealed that the attack on Arab al-Aramshe was preceded by Hezbollah firing anti-tank missiles at the town, followed by the launch of drones, which struck a community center. Social media footage captured the moment the explosive-laden drone crashed into the community center, intensifying fears among residents. In response, the IDF targeted launch sites and buildings used by Hezbollah operatives in southern Lebanon. The military vowed to defend Israeli communities along the border, threatening further action if Hezbollah continues its aggression. And as Israel is facing rising tensions from not only Iran's proxies but Iran itself, Israel is forced to make challenging decisions on all fronts. Joining us now is Director of the International Institute of Counterterrorism, Colonel Miri Eisen. Colonel Eisen, thank you for joining us today. I'd like to start
Always a pleasure.
I'd like to start with Iran. Why do you think there's been a delay on the attack in Iran? ABC reported that it was cancelled twice. Is this related to developments in Rafah? What's being prepared there?
Israel has never said that we would directly attack Iran. These are decisions that are not automatic. Iran openly attacked Israel. We're all aware of that. The Israeli response is a combination of deterrence against Iran, and part of that deterrence is also the international coalition against Iran. So this isn't a situation that there was a decision that was canceled to attack. Rather, it's looking at all the different elements that will isolate Iran, put it where it should be, the pariah state of the world.
So as days go on, Israel's potential response is becoming more and more delayed. Should the response, if there will be one, to Iran's attack have been immediate? Why are they delaying it? Is it due to international pressure?
Israel did not have a plan in that sense for Iran being the country that presents itself as the legitimate country in the world defending itself. Israel right now is in a multi-front war. We are fighting both against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, against the different proxies of Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen have been firing against us. So that automatic idea that the first reaction is that Israel is going to attack Iran, you can be against Iran, deter Iran, isolate Iran. It's not about the physical attack itself. I'm not waiting for an attack. I'm waiting for Iran yet again to be perceived as the pariah state of the world.
Okay, so moving away from Iran then and looking at its proxies, what do you expect the next steps in Gaza to be? You know, while public opinion claims the war is over, the objectives of the operation seem far from achieved.
Israel has been systematically, over the last 6.5 months, destroying the capability of the terror military army, Hamas, to do the kind of attack they did on October 7th. They did a horrific combined attack against Israel, and that systematic response is to make sure they cannot do that kind of attack again. Hamas is a large terror army. It is part of the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip. It is also the ruler. These are all challenges that we're all aware of. Israel has not stopped attacking them. We are still every single day in the Gaza Strip attacking them, continuing that fight, and that will continue. It hasn't been stopped, and contrary to what people think, there's no ceasefire, and Israel continues to attack those capabilities.
Right, and now shifting to the north, where we are seeing escalations as recent as yesterday. Attacks on the northern border occur daily. Haven't we reached a turning point? You know, is it time to escalate this conflict?
Israel has been escalating, and in this case, I would say, taking the initiative against Hezbollah over the last few months. Israel is not waiting for the Hezbollah attacks. Yes, they still do happen, but Israel is preemptively attacking different facilities, not just in the south of Lebanon, but also further up north in the Bekaa Valley, in other arenas, attacking Revolutionary Guards, as allegedly Israel has done, is part of that northern front. Those are the supply routes. They are the logistics. They're the ones who supply all of the weaponry. So I would argue that Israel is already both changing the rules of the game, not allowing Hezbollah to define the rules of the game. Hezbollah has those capabilities. They will continue to try to define it. And I think right now, Hezbollah is much more reacting than preempting.
Absolutely. And one final question. What covert methods could be used to conclude the fighting in the north and ensure the return of the residents?
Wow, there is no easy answer to how do you get tens of thousands of people to move back to their homes that happen to be adjacent to the Israeli-Lebanese border and be sure that they are secure and that Hezbollah will not be using them as their target aim. I do not have an easy answer for that one. I want to hope that the combined cooperation with the international community, with perhaps the Lebanese government that is not an effective government, and hand in hand, I really do not see how this happens without a more robust Israeli action in the north, part of which we're seeing now.
Colonel Eisen, thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple.
Today marks 195 days that the hostages have spent under Hamas captivity in Gaza, and Qatar has released a shocking statement announcing that they are re-evaluating their mediation role between Israel and Hamas. More from William Sharon.
In a significant development, Qatar is re-evaluating its mediation role between Israel and Hamas. Qatari Prime Minister El-Tahini stated during a press conference in Doha that Qatar is undergoing a thorough reassessment of its involvement. He expressed frustration over what he described as exploitation and criticism of Qatari's mediation efforts by certain politicians. El-Tahini referred to a misuse of this mediation for narrow political interests, and this necessitated Qatar to undertake a full evaluation of this role. Qatar, along with the United States and Egypt, has been engaged in behind-the-scenes negotiations aiming to secure a truce in Gaza and the release of Israeli hostages held by Gazan terror groups. However, despite weeks of talks, progress has been elusive, with negotiations stalling rapidly. El-Tahini highlighted the sensitive nature of the current stage and Qatar's effort to address the deadlock. Qatar's mediation efforts have faced criticism from various quarters, including Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has voiced concerns over Qatar's alleged failure to pursue Hamas in the hostage talks. In response, Qatar has rebuffed Israel's request for assistance in Gaza's reconstruction, citing Jerusalem's treatment of Qatar throughout the conflict. The relationship between Israel and Qatar has been complex, marked by economic ties and humanitarian aid initiatives. Qatar's financial support for Gaza has drawn criticism, with some arguing it strengthens Hamas at the expense of the Palestinian Authority and Israel's regional allies. As Qatar reassesses its role and tensions simmer in the region, the fate of Gaza and the prospects for peace remain uncertain.
In a recent UN Security Council meeting, Israel was accused of blocking the entrance of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. Yet the evidence is crystal clear. The abundance of food is being inspected and transferred but not reaching the Palestinians. So where is it going? More in this report from ILTV's Devo Klein.
In Wednesday's UN Security Council meeting, UNRWA Commissioner General Felipe Lazzarini called the humanitarian situation in Gaza a man-made famine.
Across the border, food and clean water wait. But UNRWA is denied permission to deliver this aid and save lives. This outrage is occurring despite consecutive orders by the International Court of Justice to increase the flow of aid into Gaza, which can be done if there is sufficient political will.
The monitoring of aid entering the Gaza Strip is a vital process in restricting Hamas's capabilities through UNRWA. Mountains of evidence revealing that multiple UNRWA employees participated in the October 7th massacre and the UNRWA affiliation with Hamas has prompted COJAT, the coordination of government activities in the territories, to monitor the aid entering the Gaza Strip. COJAT has said time and again that there is no limit to the humanitarian aid entering the Strip, and recently COJAT opened another inspection point for aid in the port of Ashdod, facilitating the entry of even more aid.
What you can see behind me is humanitarian aid, food, that was inspected here in the Ashdod port and will make its way into the Gaza Strip. This is not only an additional route for humanitarian aid to make its way to where it's needed, it is also an additional inspection point, increasing our capacity even more. This is part of the new phase of Israel's humanitarian campaign. There is no limit to the amount of humanitarian aid we are willing to facilitate, because we know that our war is with Hamas, not with the people of Gaza.
Kojat revealed that many humanitarian aid trucks last week were sitting at the Kerem Shalom crossing, waiting for UNRWA delivery. Aid documentation from Kojat confirms that aid is being distributed in Gazan markets. Israel's ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, emphasized the real role that UNRWA plays in the Gaza Strip.
UNRWA's goal is not aid or real education. In practice, UNRWA is creating a sea of Palestinian refugees, millions of them, indoctrinated to believe that Israel belongs to them. UNRWA is the world's biggest advocate for a one-state solution. I repeat, UNRWA is the world's biggest advocate for a one-state solution, a Palestinian state from the river to the sea. Israel cannot and will not allow UNRWA to continue in Gaza as it did in the past. I repeat, there are alternatives to UNRWA, and it's up to you if they can succeed.
And in further news, the 15-member council is due to vote this Friday on a draft resolution that recommends to the 193-member UN General Assembly that the state of Palestine be admitted to membership of the United Nations. A council resolution needs at least 9 votes in favor and no vetoes by the US, Britain, France, Russia, or China to pass, placing the relied on US veto to block the admission of a Palestinian state to the UN.
Joining us now for more on Qatar's reevaluation as mediator and the UN's recent Security Council meeting is Alex Trayman. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's first start with recent news regarding Qatar's reconsideration of their role as mediator between Israel and Hamas. Do you think that the United States is doing enough and putting enough pressure on Qatar to reach a hostage deal?
I don't think so. We're 6 months into the war. If we were going to have a hostage deal through Qatar, we probably could have had it a long time ago. The United States has been essentially kissing up to Qatar and forcing Israel to do the same. We've even seen articles in the Jerusalem Post praising Qatar's role as a potential mediator. However, I think the results speak for themselves. Since the release of 110 hostages early on in the conflict, we haven't seen even the release of another single hostage. So, this is the real questions about Qatar's ability to get a deal done.
So where has this decision come from? Do you think that there is maybe a connection between Netanyahu's condemnation of Al Jazeera and Qatar's reconsideration? I mean, where has this come from?
Well, I think that it's pressure that Qatar is putting on Israel and the United States. They've been looking for Israel to make more and more conciliations in the negotiations, and they're not getting them. They're not getting what they want, so they're basically saying, look, we're the ones that talk to Hamas, and if you're not going to play along and give us everything that we want, so fine, we'll step out and try to negotiate on your own. And I think it's a false strategy because Hamas has already demonstrated that maybe it doesn't even have 40 hostages to give back to Israel. I think they're trying to use this threat to put pressure on Israel, to put pressure on the United States, but I'm not sure that even having them involved can produce results in any case.
Right, and I also want to talk a little bit about the UN's Security Council meeting. Do you think the UN Security Council's consideration of Palestinian UN membership is realistic, given the expected US veto? Minister Erdogan claims a yes vote promotes a terrorist state. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, certainly the idea that the Palestinians should get a state as a result of October 7th would be a horrific diplomatic disaster, not just for Israel, but for the entire international community, because it would encourage any terror entity to go ahead and commit brutal acts of terror in order to gain their diplomatic goals. I don't think that you're going to see it be successful at this stage, particularly after Iran has struck Israel. Israel would lose a lot of trust in the United States at this point if the U.S. allowed this resolution to go through. However, I do think that even if the resolution fails on Friday, which it is expected to fail, that this is a pathways towards Palestinian statehood that we might see in the future if relations between the United States and Israel break down in the future.
Right, and so with all of that in mind, what do you think Israel's next move should be?
With regards to the Palestinian statehood, Israel should oppose Palestinian statehood. Palestinian statehood should only come if Palestinians train their society to sit in peace alongside the state of Israel. Meanwhile, they continue to incite their societies. The Palestinian Authority especially does that through their pay-for-slay terror financing scheme and incitement in textbooks and in public speeches and in naming squares after terrorists. Until they make the changes that demonstrate that they want to moderate the same ways that the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Bahrainis have moderated and want to seriously normalize with Israel because of the economic advantages of such normalization, I think that Israel should avoid any kind of steps towards Palestinian statehood at all costs.
Alex, as always, thank you so much for your analysis and your time.
Thanks for having me.
Tech giant Google suffered a massive wave of protests across its offices in the United States when anti-Israel employees stormed the offices and occupied them, threatening that they wouldn't leave if Google didn't drop a deal created with Israel. ILTV's William Sharon has the full report.
28 Google employees have been fired after protesting a $1.2 billion deal with Israel in the tech giant's New York and Sunnyvale, California offices. Anti-Israel activists forcibly entered the offices in New York City and Sunnyvale for several hours on Tuesday, threatening that they would not leave the premise until the project is terminated. New York law enforcement arrived at the scene to remove the protesters. The deal, Project Nimbus, stems from an Israeli government deal with Amazon Web Services and Google, a project that is set to provide cloud services for Israel's public sector and military. Google officials confirm that all protesters involved were arrested and put on administrative leave. Google Vice President of Global Security Chris Rafah was quoted saying, "Behavior like this has no place in our workplace and will not tolerate it." Rafah added, "It clearly violates multiple policies that all employees must adhere to, include our code of conduct and policy on harassment, discrimination, retaliation, standards of conduct, and workplace concerns." Google has faced a lot of criticism regarding their partnership with Israel. Now, for the first time since the start of the war in Gaza, employees are being fired for their conduct and harmful protests.
Today marks 195 days since the October 7th massacre, where Israeli citizens were ripped from their homes and taken to the Gaza Strip, where they are still being held. 195 days undergoing horrific abuse. The plight of the hostages is as devastating as ever. Family members of Israelis taken hostage are still hopeful for their loved ones' return. And this is the story of Danny Moran, the father of the hostage, Omri Moran, who saw his hope that his son will return.
This used to be known as Library Square. Now it's known as Kikar Chatufim, Hostage Square. There are hostage families. Families of those who are still held hostage, families of those who have been released. And together, we are all activists. We are all fighting to bring them home, to return the hostages who are still held, and also to tell their stories. This is a war that all Jews and our allies around the world must fight to bring them home.
מאז שהבן שלי נחטף, אנחנו בעצם לא יודעים עליו כלום. רק כשהחטופות חזרו, קיבלנו איזשהו מידע שהוא ראה אותו בחיים. המחשבות שעולות הן כאלה, אם הם נמצאים עכשיו בתוך המנהרות, איך הוא יגיע, באיזה מצב, והוא ילד שאוהב לאכול, ואם לא נותנים לו שם אוכל, מה קורה איתו? מה הוא חושב על הילדות שלו? ילדה אחת ביום החטיפה הייתה בת 6 חודשים, והגדולה יותר הייתה בת 2 וחודשיים. והיא לפני חודשיים בערך באה לאמא שלה ואמר לה, אמא, אני יודעת, אנחנו ישבנו אצל צחי בבית, ואנשים רעים לקחו את אבא. לפני שבועיים היא שאלה את אמא שלה, אם עומרי עדיין אבא שלה. אני מגדל זקן מאותו יום כהזדהות עם הבן שלי. ואני מאמין שביום שהוא יגיע שנינו נוריד את הזקנים ביחד.
One person's trauma is everybody's trauma. One person's son is all of our sons.
We are family with him.
אני יכול לתת לך חיבוק, אני חושב שאני גם צריך ממך חיבוק. תודה ולהתראות.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching highs of around 16 degrees Celsius or 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny skies are expected alongside hot temperatures set to reach highs of 25 degrees Celsius or 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures should continue rising over the weekend. That's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channels, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and don't forget to check out our website, iltv.tv, with all the latest updates from the State of Israel. I'm Ariella Leoni. Be well. Thank you so much for watching.